Welcome to the Joe Watt podcast. I am Joao Vendramini from the Range Cattle Research and Education Center, and today our guest is Dr. Philipe Moriel from the Range Cattle Research and Education Center at the University of Florida. Philipe, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Philipe, can you please tell us some background information about you?
Sure. I am originally from Brazil. I got my bachelor degree in animal science from São Paulo State University in 2008. Then came to the United States to do my graduate school, did my master's at the University of Wyoming, then PhD at the University of Florida at the Range Cattle Research and Education Center. Finished in 2013, and then I went and I was hired at North Carolina State University, where I worked for 2.5 years as an assistant professor at the Mountain Research Station in Waynesville. And then in 2016, I came back to the University of Florida as a faculty as well, and as an assistant professor at the Range Cattle Station at ONA since.
And Philipe, your area of focus, it has been management in general, but you are doing a lot of supplementation work. And one of the interesting among the projects that you are doing is one of the interesting projects is the one about fetal programming. It seems a very current topic that people are excited about it. So I would like to explore the fetal programming talking with you. So could you please tell us the definition and the basics of what is fetal programming?
Yeah, so this area it's quite interesting because it offers a lot of opportunity to improve the overall performance of the entire herd. We have always paid attention to nutrition of beef females, always focusing on their reproductive performance, right, on the subsequent breeding season. But over the past 20, 25 years, more and more research in all species have shown that the nutrition of a pregnant female is also important to determine how the quality of the offspring, right, the performance and the health of the offspring. So the concept is that because the fetal is developing during the entire pregnancy, all the tissues are being developed during the entire pregnancy, and you can change the nutrition of this female throughout pregnancy, and that might modulate how these tissues are being developed. And because a lot of these tissues continue to develop even after birth, so there's a lot of potential to manipulate how these calves are going to perform in the future. So, for example, there has been a lot of interest on how does stress during gestation affect the health of calves once they're born, for example. But at ONA, we focus a lot on how the nutrition during the late gestation impact those animals, mostly because the characteristics of our region and of our animals that we're going to talk in a minute.
And Philipe, focusing more on the beef cattle standpoint, can you tell us some information that is already present in the literature that shows some evidence of fetal programming?
About 20 years ago, or a little less than that, a lot of research come up with looking at supplementation with protein supplements during the last trimester of gestation. And people used to focus only during that period of gestation because that's when the majority of the calf growth happens during gestation. So for example, 2/3 of a calf growth happens during the last 3 months of gestation. And it's also really close to calving time. So it was important to make sure these cows would calve in good condition, right? So the protein supplementation before just calving was always focused on improving the reproductive performance of the mothers. But they also start following how the calves behaved after they were born. And there has been several studies in other parts of the United States showing that when you improve the nutritional status of those cows during the last 3 months of gestation, you can actually increase weaning weights by close to 20 pounds. There's also evidence that you can increase carcass quality, more carcasses grading choice or better, and greater marbling scores. And there's also evidence that the heifers born from those cows that received improved nutrition during late gestation, they also achieve purity sooner. So that's great news for the producer, the cow-calf producer, because now you not only have the improved performance of the mothers during the reproductive performance to help pay for the cost of supplementation, but you also might be harvesting a better quality calf, heavier at weaning or better carcass, or achieving purity at a much earlier age. So all of those studies that were done in other parts of the United States, some of them in Australia, but this topic really picked it up over the last 15 years in terms of evaluating beef cattle performance.
And Philippe, going back to the literature, so we know we see the other parts of the United States, so we know that that is primarily focused on Bos Toros, right? So right. English breeds and some continental breeds, but so how does that translate to our subtropical and how the animals that has more of the Bos Indicus bloodlines, they would respond to those stimulus?
Yeah, that's a great question, because if you see there's a lot of cattle in subtropical and subtropical environments, right? So when we look at fetal programming studies, the vast majority were done with Bos Toros animals in cool season grasses. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people extrapolating those results to animals in our region, right? And with animals that has more Bos Indicus influence, and animals that are grazing warm season grasses in a much more challenging environment. So when I came back to University of Florida, that was one of my goals, was to actually focus more on that area to see if our animals are behaving as good as the other studies have reported as in other parts of the United States. So we wanted to see if, are we also going to have greater weaning weights or carcass quality or earlier puberty achievement if we apply the same or similar nutritional strategies here in a tropical environment. And so far we have, but when you compare the response that we're getting here and response that we're getting in other countries, for example, Brazil, where they're focusing on animals that are 100% Bos Indicus, it seems that they do respond on a positive way towards supplementing during late gestation, but not as much as other papers have reported in other regions. Now, we're still in a much earlier stage. We need more studies, more evidences of different nutritional strategies to come up with a conclusion. It's still really early to make a definite conclusion, but it does seem that the animals that have Bos Indicus influence, they're able to spare the fetus a little bit more than the ones that are with the Bos Toros. Now, we might change that view in a few years as we start collecting more data, but that's what it seems like that we observe. So to give you an example, those studies that I told you that they were supplemented with protein during late gestation, 1 pound of a protein supplement during the last 3 months of gestation with animals that were Bos Toros, they observed close to 20 pounds of additional weaning weights on those animals. And in our situation, we're using supplementation a little bit higher than that, close to 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds per day during the last trimester of gestation. And we see somewhere between 10 to 30 pounds. It really depends on the study. So the variation is higher, but most of them are more close to the 10, 15 pound difference. But again, like I said, it's too early because we are still doing a lot of those studies. We need more data. We need more focus on that area. They are responding in a positive way, but not as much as we thought they would.
And the few research projects that are already published in the literature, so are they consistently positive, or they have with Bos Indicus in our environment? The ones that we have published, what is the response?
Yeah, so I can tell you it is highly variable, more variable than what we have seen with Bos Toros. For example, there are a lot of the research that are currently available in Brazil, for example, using 100% Bos Indicus. Most of the studies do not see a positive response on weaning weights, for example. Now, the reason might be because the supplementation amount was just too small to induce any effect. So we don't have any study using the same amount of supplementation on the same environment and comparing those differences of Bos Indicus blood to draw a conclusion. But at ONA, for example, since we started those studies in 2017, that we see two responses that are very consistent One is increasing weaning weights. We are increasing, like I said, 10 to 30 pounds, depending on the strategy. And also is the health of the animals. Something positive that we see is that calves that are born from cows that receive supplementation before calving, they do respond better to a vaccine against bovine respiratory disease. More calves respond to the vaccination, and those that do respond to the vaccine, they also have greater amount of production of antibodies. Right, so you not only have more calves that are giving you responding to the vaccine, right, but also those that do respond, they have a stronger immune response to the vaccination. And this is something that very consistent. We have done 4 studies so far, and it happened in all of them, the immune system. Weaning weights happen in 3 of them. We increased weaning weights in 3 of those studies. Only 1 of them we did not increase the weaning weights of those cows. Those cases.
And I think, Philippe, there is something there as well that we are trying to target that body condition, the ideal body condition at birth, right? I think that's the main goal. And then we are adding supplement. But also, I think a question is, we reached that 5, right? Body condition score 5. So is there an advantage of bumping up the supplementation, you know, and probably those cows will reach close to 6, right? Yes. That may not be really beneficial to reproduction, but somehow it may, if you keep your animals, keep the ownership and finish your animals, or in any other situation, that you keep your heifers and you're gonna have a better pregnancy rates for yearlings, so on and so forth. So
yeah, that's a great point, Joe, because that's exactly what happens at our station, right? So we wean our calves the last week of July, first week of August, and those cows will start calving around late October or early November. So breeding season started in January. So when you're looking in August, when we wean those cows, they are in great condition. They are body condition score 5. So technically you will not need supplementation. And we have plenty of grass. So when I talk to people about supplementing before calving, everybody thinks that we're crazy because we have plenty of grass and the cows are on a body condition score 5. Those cows, they will lose some condition in the last 30 to 40 days of gestation, right? Which will put them around a body condition score slightly below 5, right? But when we look at their pregnancy rates compared to those that are calved on body condition score 6, we didn't see much of a difference. But every study that we ran here at with the field program, we see a positive response due to supplementation. So in terms of harvesting a benefit of of improved performance of the calf, that seems to happen regardless of the condition of the cow. Is the actual improvement on nutritional status during late gestation that causes this better performance of the calves, regardless of the body condition score of the cow. So yes, in our studies, they started in a good condition 5. They calved in a body condition score 5 without no supplementation. The animals that did receive supplementation, they calved in a body condition score 6. And like I said, we did not see any differences in pregnancy rates, but the calf performance consistently improved. And in that scenario, and that was like last year, using the calf prices of last year when we ended the study, I can tell you, for example, we ran a study for 2 years looking at supplementation with dry distillers grains, about 2 pounds of dry distillers grains for the last 70 to 80 days before calving. And then we compare that with no supplementation at all to those cows before calving. Then after calving, everybody was treated exactly the same. So like I said, the group that would receive supplementation, they calved in a body condition score of 6 or slightly higher. And the group that did not receive supplementation, they calved in a 4.75, really close to a 5. After calving, those cows did not lose more than 0.5% of their, half of a point of body condition score. So they calved good, and their loss was very minimal after that. So pregnancy rates did not differ. But the calf weaning weights were 30 pounds heavier for those that were born from cows that received supplementation compared to those that were not. And this study, we're finishing up writing the manuscript, and we should send it this year. And when you run the numbers of those calves, just the actual extra winning weights of those animals paid off for the supplementation that we invested before calving. So if you're running into a situation that your cows are starting, that you're weaning your calves on a body condition score 4, so you know that they're going to calve in a much lower than that, then in that scenario, the pre-calving supplementation will most likely also increase the pregnancy rates of those animals, not just the calf performance. But so far, and then obviously, like any nutritional strategy, I can't always say that it will be paid off because that highly depends on the calf price and the price of the supplement. But even the good thing is that we have been able to pay it off, even though we did not observe any positive effects on reproductive performance of the mothers. And now what we're trying to do now is to evaluate different supplements, different amounts or different frequencies of supplementation, always trying to minimize the cost and still harvest the better performance of the mother and the calf.
Yeah, and Philippe, we are going towards the end of our conversation here today. So before we finish, I'd like to ask you what is your activities like as a hobby? What do you do on your extra time? When you have some extra time, what do you like to do?
For the past few years, biking has been quite of a hobby. After hurting the knee, I could not run anymore with you guys at lunch. But one hobby that became a passion for me is fishing, especially at the Bahamas. There's a lot of good fishing there, so quite blessed to be able to do that.
That's great. So Philippe, I would like to thank you for your participation in the podcast today. I am Joao Vendramini.
Joe, what?